All right, here we go. 365 Sports. All the decisions, it seemed like, pretty much, not all, but a lot of them, quarterback, QB1 decisions made. Most of them not a surprise by any means. Baylor's was not. DeQuan Finn named the starter earlier this week. J.J. Joe, Baylor Radio Color Analyst and former Baylor quarterback, joins us on 365 Sports. J.J., I wasn't surprised. I don't think anybody would have been surprised unless it would have been Sawyer. And we haven't been able to watch much. I'm not sure if you got to watch any of the scrimmages, but just your thoughts about that decision. It took a long, long time. Do you think it was that close of a competition?
Hi, guys. It's almost season. It's almost time of the season, so I'm glad to be on with you. But I really do. I think that we all believed DeQuan was going to be the guy. You know, it's hard to teach, you know, being in the fire. DeQuan over at Toledo has been in the MAC championship game. He's played well, performed well, and it's hard to get that experience. And when you have someone that has that type of experience on campus, typically you're going to give him a chance to prove that he can't do it once he's done it. Now Sawyer, I've heard good things. I haven't been down as much, but I've heard great things on Sawyer. And I expected it because once you get that first taste of, I guess you can say, playing time under your belt, typically you do make a leap. Typically you make a leap that next year because, first of all, you don't want to go back to the bench. But the second thing is that now you understand a little bit more about the speed of the game and what's required. So I think DeQuan's the right decision, but I think they'll both will play.
JJ, I know we've talked to you a couple of times since the season ended, and we've probably discussed this, but now as we draw closer, you strike me as somebody pretty excited about the change in offensive scheme. Would I be correct in saying that?
Man, you would be 100% correct, right? Don't get me wrong, I really like what Grimes did. I think it really fit, especially what he was doing at BYU. I think BYU recruits a little different than Baylor. In Utah, you have some talent, but I think we would all go on record to say that, the talent here in Texas is a little bit more deep and a little different than in Utah. In Texas, if you're not going to recruit speed, if you're not going to recruit receivers and corners, as well as quarterbacks, because quarterbacks, I'm not saying they grow on trees here, but here in Texas, we train them from about the 5th grade. You start, I think, to struggle, and I think we started to struggle because there's so much talent in this state, especially on the edge, man. You got to recruit it, and you got to be able to attract them at a high rate.
JJ, you could run, and kind of listening to some feedback that I had about DeQuan Finn is that, yes, he can take off, and when he does, he can be absolutely dangerous. But that he does have at least the instinct of not immediately, once his first option is covered or not there, of just running, that he will wait a little bit longer and then take off. How hard is that for someone that can run?
It's really tough. I was never as fast as this young man. I've seen his highlights. I saw him against Ohio State. I saw him in different games, and this young man can go. And, it is tempting when you have talent like that. You've probably grown up being one of the fastest kids on the field, and sometimes you'll probably overuse it. I did like the fact that, he completed passes at a pretty decent, I think it was like 62, something like that percent last year, pretty close to it. But he did use his legs quite a bit. So I think it makes it really tough on defenses because the first thing you say is, you know what, we don't want him to run. The one thing we don't want to do is want him to run. So I think as long as DeQuan can figure out the rhythm in this offense, how to make sure he's completing passes and threatening the defenses on that back end enough, I think you have a special year with both his feet and his arm. But I know it's tempting not to run more often than not.
What is your concern level with the offensive line? And I think that's the biggest thing for everybody who's following the program. And how does that play into what maybe we do see from DeQuan Finn or how he makes decisions?
Yeah, I think that was a big part in it. I know that, I've heard a lot of good things. And a lot of guys, we've got some transfers in. I think we got 4 new, upperclassmen guys that have been recruited through the portal. And I think this line will look a lot different. And I believe the scheme will help this line. I think spreading people out, making things simpler for the quarterback to see, not having to, really control linemen. And not that the wide zone required you to dominate a guy, but I think in this offense, you can use some of those backs with the speed to really threaten those defensive linemen and really hold them just a little bit, because you got a quarterback that can run and you got a running back that can, that has good speed. So the line is going to be essential, because eventually that group is going to dictate how many games, at least how well you play on offense. And if coach wants to get back to bowl eligibility and even 8, 7, 8, 9 potential wins, this offensive line will have had a good year if that happens.
This segment with J.J. Joe, brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bear Hotline, and also brought to you by Alliance Bank. Again, on the segments with J.J. and also Ricky Thompson. J.J., with the fact that DeQuan Finn can run, and the fact that he doesn't just immediately take off, although that might happen if it's a called run, how does that affect the secondary? And does that open up the possibility of more one-on-one matchups because they have to worry about him?
Well, I think if I'm a defensive coordinator, what I would do is I would play a little bit more zone, because you want to keep eyes on. I mean, you don't want guys chasing guys across formation and downfield, and all of a sudden you have this dynamic playmaker that's running the ball. So I think initially maybe you see a little bit more zone, and of course they'll heat him up to see if he can process and handle the blitzes in the right manner. But I think you play a little bit more zone, which also ought to give him an opportunity to find holes in the zone. You have 4 wides. And the one thing DeQuan can't do, I mean, he's a really good runner, but I don't think he's thrown for 3,000 yards in a season. I think he had 2,700 maybe. He needs to throw for 3,000. If this offense is going to be what it needs to be with those receivers, Keytron back, Howell, all those guys, you have the speed. We have Ashton Hawkins. You have Monterey Baldwin. You don't want those guys mad at you. They love to see you run, but they want to catch the ball in this offense, and you got to use that bevy of receivers. And I think if he's going to throw for 3,000, it needs to happen this year. And I think if he does throw for 3,000, we're blocking well, our running game is working, and those receivers are happy.
How intrigued are you by Dave Aranda, defensive coordinator / head coach?
Say, man, hey, I am very intrigued. And I'm excited, to be honest with you, because I think Dave Aranda, I think he's the kind of guy, like, he wanted the previous, defensive coordinators to own it. He didn't want to be in their business, for lack of a better term. But I think this will help him get, not that he wasn't into the game, but I think Coach Aranda, because he is a laid back guy, really needs something to focus on. And I think sometimes that brings the energy. And I'll tell you, I mean, you don't have to have a head coach that's banging his head off the wall. I mean, you don't need that. Coaches have different styles. But I think he's so laid back and, let's say, understated. He needs to find ways to get him amped up. And when your defense is making mistakes or even playing well, it's hard not to get amped up.
What was your initial reaction when you heard Gary Patterson had left and was no longer really a part of it? And then, like, just a few days later, he showed up at practice one day.
Well, I thought it was – I just figured it was one of those situations where, I mean, like, it had run its course much quicker than all of us expected. And maybe Gary had one understanding of what his role was going to be and Coach had another, but it was really odd. I kind of hated it, to be honest with you. As much as I didn't really like Gary that much, I always thought he's a great coach. Because I thought, one thing you can say about that guy is he knows defenses. He knows how to game plan games. Regardless of the 61-58. Okay, we know he was the coach then, but he knows how to game plan games, and he can help you. And I think him on the staff in whatever role, he'll be a great addition.
I know they've just started opening it up, JJ, but have you had a chance to check out the new facilities at all?
Man, I have not. I've just kind of seen some of the video. I try to keep my distance a little bit, and now, it's kind of hard because I think, everything changes so much. New facility, the players, we have portal stuff, so a lot of new players. So I'm looking forward to it, but hadn't had a chance to see it.
Well, I saw a video. Craig, you've been over to practices a lot more than I have, but I saw the video, and it is it is state of the art the way you would think with all the amenities you would expect.
Hey, one thing I'll say about the young men now, hey, look, they get paid. You got the best facilities. Now you got to go do work. I'm really hoping what we see from all this is that, that the young men who are there, who are having all this benefit, that they appreciate and they play at a level, man, that's expected of them, and that we all want to see. So I'm happy for all the coaches, the players, but I'm more excited to see what product they put out on that field, man, a week from Saturday.
Most definitely. JJ, what in line with that, what did you think of the "we're paying players" viral Aranda quote? I mean, he was just being blunt, and there was nothing, off about it. I think just the bluntness of it is what shocked people mostly, but they've got a really good run going on in recruiting. I just wonder what you make of that. And I think maybe sometimes people don't understand, even for a small school, Baylor can find a pretty big amount of support when they need to.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of different, man, because I think Elliot Coffey, of course, who played there and does some work, he posted the pitch, and I saw it, and I said, hey, I tweeted. I said, hey, he put it on the shirt. They put it on the shirt. Yeah. So I was kind of like, well, I guess, hey, that's what's happening. So why not? And I'm not surprised at Aranda. If you've heard Aranda over the last 3, 4, 5 years, man, he's very blunt, just like matter of fact.
Yeah.
And what it told me too, Smoke, is that he's now accepted where we are. That sometimes a relationship you have to figure out how to make it relational, even if it also has some elements of a transactional type relationship. And I think he's figured that out.
Yeah, you weren't at Big 12 Media Days, but that's when we were interviewing him, and Craig asked him about the surge in recruiting, and he just blurted it out, and it was like it's like it was just so simple, and we all
right.
Craig then goes, that's it? And yeah, that's it. And it's really taken charge, and it turned into a hell of a deal with the T-shirts and a lot more.
It did. And like I said, I think he's embraced it. And Smoke, at the end of the day, the only way you get guys to play at a high level, it's not because all of a sudden they can go buy a car or they can go buy a new suit. It's going to be because they want to play for that coach and they want to play for that staff. And I think Aranda, he is who he is, he's not pretentious. He's matter of fact. He's being upfront. I think guys will love to play for him and play hard for him. And really, I think, like, let's put it this way. This is my last thing. We haven't heard him have to come out like Gundy came out 2 weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. We haven't heard him have to come out what Gundy said. So that tells me that once you kind of get all the economics out the way, the guys still have to really like the coach, want to play for that guy, right? And they don't get caught up in all that other stuff. Of course, they don't always come up, but I like the way he handles it.
All right, JJ, if you were a group of 5 school, and there are some good ones, Memphis, Boise State, et cetera, Tulane just, a couple of years ago or so, and they beat USC, Texas State with G.J. Kinney or whoever, and you started the year and you now know, at least for the next couple of years, that the highest-ranked conference champion among the group of 5 is going to make the playoffs. How much, other than just playing anyway, how much of an incentive will that be?
I think it's huge, Smoke. I mean, they expanded it. You have a spot, and of course, like most, like it's been over the last 5 years, they know they can't trip up. I mean, they have to go win all these games and be the highest ranked one. So I think it's a huge motivating factor. I love that we're at 12 teams, man. I really do. I don't think we need to go to 16. I like the buys, but I love being at 12. I love that in some sense it's inclusive in a sense, but I'll reserve judgment. I just don't want it to be the Big Ten SEC Invitational, by them taking up all the spots. But I like it. I think you expand it, and then you let the small schools, because you could tell me, hey, they won't win a natty, but you tell me what, if Texas State or if Boise or if Marshall or whoever those teams, if they get in and beat somebody. You know how big that is for them in recruiting and raising more money? It's huge. So I'm happy to see it, and I hope access is maintained where we can keep teams like that into the playoff.
All right, I want to go back to one more thing about quarterback play.
Uh-huh.
The one thing I've heard about Sawyer is that if he starts off poorly, like a practice, and it's just not going well, that it's hard for him to kind of get out of that hole, where DeQuan has the ability to just basically by making plays can try to get himself out of just, let's say, having a bad day. How hard is that when you start poorly to try to get out of that? Or is that something that just should be pretty natural?
No, it's hard, Smoke. I've had plenty of those. Like you have sometimes some games, some practices where for some reason you're just a little off. It could be like going to the links. Sometimes you're not hitting it right. You can't correct it. And for a quarterback, that's huge. Now the big thing that you learn, and I think this is why DeQuan is starting, is because what you learn with reps. I love quarterbacks with reps. I think you don't go to the NFL until you've had 30 plus games under your belt, is that you learn that, okay, this is one of those games that I have to manage. I have to get there, and then I'll have an opportunity to make a play later on to help us win. And you're able to not press. I think DeQuan, because he has really nice feet, he can simplify the game at some point. If his accuracy is a little off one game, or if he's just not seeing it clearly, it looks a little muddy, he knows at the end of the day I have my feet. And I can go get 5 yards. I can go get 3 yards. I can get it to 3rd and 2 and keep the offense moving. And I think that helps him fight his way through those rough outings.
JJ, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the night, rest of the week. We'll see you next Saturday against Tarleton State. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. JJ Joe with his Baylor Radio on many things with the quarterback play and other issues, topics, etc.